What does it mean to live every night knowing that dawn may never come quietly? To sleep fully clothed. To keep children silent. To memorize escape routes instead of prayers. In the American Southwest of the 18th and 19th centuries, this was not paranoia. It was preparation. For settlers, missionaries, rival tribes, and even other native communities, life on the frontier unfolded beneath the constant threat of sudden violence. Raids did not announce themselves. They arrived on horseback, in darkness, and vanished just as quickly. Homes burned. Families fractured. And for women, survival often meant something far worse than death. Among the many indigenous groups navigating this violent frontier, the Apache developed a reputation that outlived the era itself. Feared, respected, and relentlessly hunted, Apache bands relied on mobility, surprise, and psychological warfare to survive in a landscape shaped by invasion, displacement, and retaliation. Their methods were brutal. Their enemies were no less so. But women consistently bore the heaviest cost. This is not a story of monsters. It is a story of what prolonged war does to human behavior. Raids and the logic of terror. Apache raids were not chaotic outbursts. They were calculated acts shaped by survival in an unforgiving environment. Resources were scarce. Horses, food, weapons, and captives became currency. Raids ensured endurance, but they also sent a message. Women were frequently targeted, not because they were combatants, but because they were leverage. Captured women were forced to move at punishing speeds across desert terrain. Historical accounts describe captives tied, driven barefoot for miles, denied food and water until collapse became inevitable. The Spanish friar Alonso de Benavides wrote of captives who suffered beyond description, not as an exaggeration, but as an admission that words failed him. These acts were designed to break resistance, not just physically, but psychologically. Terror. Captivity and forced assimilation. For women who survived the initial capture, captivity marked the beginning of a different kind of erasure. Forced labor was routine. Cooking, carrying supplies, tending camps, enduring harsh climates without protection. But captivity went beyond labor. Many women were coerced into marriages that stripped them of identity, language, and autonomy. Within Apache society, marriage functioned as a social bond and survival mechanism. For captives, it became a method of control. These unions were rarely consensual. They erased former lives and replaced them with imposed loyalty. Children born into these circumstances further complicated escape, binding women permanently to the system that had consumed them. This was not romance. It was absorption. Violence as message. Scalping, mutilation, and public punishment served a purpose beyond cruelty. They were symbols, warnings carved into flesh. Scalps taken from women were sometimes displayed to communicate dominance and inevitability. The message was clear: resistance invited annihilation. While scalping existed across multiple cultures, including European and colonial forces who paid bounties for native scalps, its use against women amplified terror. It weaponized vulnerability. Whipping and beatings enforced compliance within captivity. Rawhide lashes and blunt force punished defiance, exhaustion, or perceived disobedience. Testimonies like that of Olive Oatman, captured in 1851, described physical violence used not impulsively, but systematically. Pain was discipline. Fear was governance. Burning and mutilation. Some of the most horrifying acts involved burning and permanent mutilation. Fingers severed. Faces scarred. Bodies marked beyond recognition. These were not random acts of rage. They were deliberate displays meant to travel through rumor faster than any army. Survivors carried warnings on their bodies long after escape, living evidence of what awaited those who crossed. It is crucial to acknowledge that Apache women suffered similarly at the hands of settlers, militias, and rival tribes. Cycles of revenge consumed all sides. No group emerged untouched. But the suffering of women, regardless of allegiance, was consistently exploited as a weapon. What history leaves uncomfortable. To tell this story responsibly is not to excuse brutality, nor to isolate it. Frontier violence was reciprocal, escalating, and deeply entangled with colonization, displacement, and survival. But acknowledging context does not erase suffering. Women were targeted because terror works best when it shatters the home. The stories documented in journals, military records, and survivor accounts reveal a frontier where morality bent under pressure, where survival demanded acts that destroyed generations. The question is not whether these acts happened. The question is what prolonged violence turned societies into. What lessons do we extract from this chapter of history? How do we remember suffering without simplifying blame? And how do we confront the truth that survival, when stripped of restraint, often devours humanity itself? Leave your thoughts below. History does not ask us to choose sides, it asks us to understand consequences.